In many respects, there is a discussion going on at the moment about the whole relevance of GCSEs to the digital age, and whether or not GCSEs even prepare young people for the real world. And I find that very interesting, because I think there's a lot of truth in those concerns, even though I'm quite a traditionalist when it comes to education. I'm still talking to my children in terms of A's, B's and C's, and they're saying, Dad, it's not A's, B's and C's anymore, it's numbers. So I'm quite traditional in that sense. But I think there's an irony here. I think one of the most important voids in the world is understanding the relationship between faith and the real lives of people, and the relationship between faith and broader geopolitics. And yet, in education terms, RE always is almost like the weak link in education. It's one of those subjects, well, we'll do it, but it's not really that important. There has been a change, which Mike alluded to the RE syllabus, the religious. Is it RE or RS now? I think the name keeps changing and evolving, but I still call it RE.
Shall I help you with that?
Yes, please.
It's RE in law,
right?
But the actual exam qualification is RS.
Right, okay.
So I think what you're talking about is RS. Clearer
still, as you can see. In terms of religious studies or RE, it was about 2014, 2015 that there was a government initiative to change the RE specification. I was going to say syllabus because that's old speak again. But the specification, which was really, it meant that schools, particularly faith-dominated schools, had to not teach just one main religion, but they had to choose a second religion as well. And that was an interesting dynamic in itself. But I think the need to study a second religion, it came from a need that government saw, and government also felt the need to intervene. When it came out, and during the process of it coming out, the discussions within faith schools were very interesting and I think quite telling. There were assumptions in the wider space about which type of schools would be most resistant to this and which weren't. The average person on the street would be forgiven for thinking that Muslim-dominated schools and Muslim faith schools would have a great deal of resistance to teaching a second faith. Relatively very low compared to other faith schools. Would you agree with that? Yeah. Relatively low. And it doesn't come as much of a surprise to Muslims, because we're quite used to discussing religions and comparing, perhaps almost not in a very positive way sometimes. But there was a great deal of resistance from Catholic schools and from certain Jewish schools as well. And in the Jewish school arena, the discussions were very, very interesting. And it really got me to understand, when I got involved with this process, how insular the outlook of these schools was. The broader landscape also gives me some cause for concern. There's a lot of talk about the rising number of Muslim schools, whereas in fact very few Muslims by numbers go to what you would call Muslim schools. But an increasing number of Jewish pupils are now going to Jewish schools. In London it's now as high as nearly 70%, and that's a move upwards. There is also a move from more sort of liberal and reform Jewish schools to the more orthodox Jewish schools. That's partly explained by the shift in balance in the Jewish community, and partly explained by the fact that the spaces don't always exist in the liberal and reform sections of the community. So if large numbers of people are going into Jewish schools, what it means to me is you're not growing up with friends who are Muslims and who are from other faith groups. And so the only time you really come into contact with Muslims of your age, and I'm using the Muslim-Jewish dichotomy here because of how these things pan out at a higher level. Once you get to university, that's the first time you come into contact with contemporaries of your age, and when you're at university, you get involved in world causes, and you really want to change the world overnight. That's a valuable thing that young people have, young adults have. It's something very precious, but it takes a while to mature, as people of my age know. If you haven't built those relationships beforehand, if you haven't built that understanding in your formative years, then it's not a very good mix. So I've been very, very supportive of this shift by government because I think it's going to yield greater scope for understanding, even if you were to look at the Jewish-Muslim relationship area. My involvement was in training teachers to teach the students GCSE Islam. Jewish schools were caught between choosing Catholicism and Islam as their second faith. Some chose Catholicism, some chose Islam. I was saying to them that actually Islam is going to be easier, really, for you to teach because in terms of understanding the requirements of the syllabus, hellfire. And here I have to admit I had so many assumptions about what I thought Jews were taught growing up. But this vivid description of hellfire that we have in Catholic texts and in Islamic texts are not there in Jewish texts. And it actually helped me to go back to my own Quran and reread the stories of the Old Testaments to try and look at the language very carefully. But that is something that has been very, very revealing to me as well. So it's been a very, very eventful journey. One Jewish school has found a way to circumvent the rules and do away with doing a second religion. So it shows you that the discomfort is there, but by and large, most schools, parents, students have been overwhelmingly positive. They've loved it. They've really taken to it, and I think it's a very good move for social relations. So I'm very excited about this.